We can't really point to a day that was fun outside of the day we exited. You're going to be on edge from the day you start until the day you exit. Most of our social media time was actually taking down posts. Every single presentation started with, we exist to eliminate cigarettes and provide reduced harm alternatives. Like, we had 10x the sales velocity and we were spending 90% less. You can't build a truly successful disruptive company without the tide turning against you and people hating you. I counted 27 clicks to pay the guy.
Hello, I'm Mike Gelb, and this is Consumer VC, where we talk about what it takes to invest in and build scalable consumer businesses. If you're enjoying the show, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes, and check out the newsletter at theconsumervc.com for a weekly roundup of the latest consumer fundraisers, product launches, and new episodes. Our guest today is Alex Cantwell, who is the founder of Cartograph Ventures. Cartograph Ventures is an early stage technology fund founded by operators for operators. Previously, Alex was an early hire and GM at JUUL. We discuss JUUL, different vice categories, his thoughts on the nicotine market today, as well as different vice products and categories, and investment areas that he finds interesting. But before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about our episode sponsor, Glimpse. Glimpse is an AI-powered end-to-end deductions management service that's focused on recovering revenue from KeHE, UNFI, Amazon, and Target for consumer brands. They centralize deductions with backups. They fully handle disputing on your behalf, the brand's behalf, and streamline the accounting process. For more, check out tryglimpse.com. And without further ado, here's Alex. Alex, thanks so much for coming on the show. I'm delighted to have you. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Mike. Super excited to talk to you today.
Totally. So when you entered JUUL, it was sub $1 million in revenue business and scaled to $1 billion in 3 years. First, how did you actually get the gig? How did you actually join JUUL from the get-go?
I hate it, but it's networks. I was in business school at Wharton. My roommate walked up to me one day and said, "Hey, I just got this email from a guy who is in my network. I don't know him personally, but my friend knows him. And he's looking for someone to help this young company, Pax Labs. They're looking for like ex-consultants like yourself. I was former BCG to come in and basically help them understand better what was happening inside of the company, because they were Series C and they were about to launch JUUL and they were trying to figure out what was going on. Of course, I had no idea what JUUL was at the time. She said, do you want to talk to the guy?"
Did you smoke or like have like any type of relationship with nicotine?
Not really. I used oral tobacco a couple times in college, like with dip sometimes. I like to smoke cigarettes when I was on a European vacation. I smoked a little, yes, like little bits, but I was not a habitual smoker or tobacco user, but I really liked like tobacco, specifically nicotine. Like I really liked the nicotine experience in general. And I also really liked what Pax was doing in general with their cannabis vaporizers. I thought it was a really cool company. And so I said, yeah, I'll absolutely talk to them.
Why was it viewed as a failure?
How
much, like, for example, like how much money maybe like was actually invested into JUUL at the time?
Let's say a lot, like millions and millions of dollars.
Million dollars, and it actually didn't take traction with consumers at the time.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a new product in a new category, and the route to market was go everywhere that cigarettes are sold, which on paper sounds really smart. Except the JUUL starter kit was $50, and everywhere cigarettes were sold was gas stations of America. And if you think about the average ring at a gas station, like the only thing that costs you $50 is your tank of gas. Outside of that, you're getting a bag of chips, a pack of cigarettes, maybe a soda or an energy drink or a cup of coffee. Like you're walking out at 10, pre-inflation, $8 or less. Nowadays, you're walking out 10 to $20. But JUUL was this very foreign object. I mean, it's this Apple-like beautiful white box. I mean, everything about it was great. But from a question of like consumer intercept and consumer acquisition, it wasn't really resonating. The velocities weren't very high. And so that was my first job, was figure out what's wrong with our current route to market strategy and overall financial plan, and figure out a new route to market strategy and financial plan.
So obviously you're able to scale JUUL eventually from, sub 1 million that we mentioned, all the way to, over $1 billion, which is wild. Talk to me a little bit about that change in terms of distribution or route to market strategy. What actually was effective and obviously worked? I mean, obviously if it's screwed,
it's funny. It's so simple. Everybody says it, and then you experience it, because it sounds simple and it's actually really hard to find. Who are your early adopters? Go find your early adopters. It turns out that going into 10, 20,000 gas stations and immediately trying to get the hardcore pack-a-day Marlboro smoker, that's really hard, right? Because like, what are you doing to convince them to shell out $50 for your unheard of Apple-like device that they've never heard of before?
And they also are already like enjoying that experience too, right? Like, they probably have been smoking for, years and years and years potentially. So why would they actually make any type of change to that habit?
Yeah, exactly. I can't say that this idea. I'm sure someone in the company, it wasn't my idea, but somebody in the company had been kind of incubating vape shops. I think this is largely carryover from PAX, because PAX vaporizers were largely making their money in head shops that became vape shops, which are now like a lot of THC stores, right? Seeing the evolution over time. But what we started seeing was in a lot of those legacy PAX accounts, which were these like vape shops, head shops, there was actually a lot of passion for the JUUL product. And not only was there a passion for it, but it was also a high education environment. These were environments where people were going in and talking to the clerk for up to an hour, sometimes 2 hours. I often called them like the Radio Shacks of the nicotine space at the time. And not only that, but the average ring size was hundreds of dollars. I mean, but if you were going into a vape shop in 2015 and you were buying one of those box mod, they were called box mod vaporizers, a big battery, like a cylinder that you would drip the liquid into, a mouthpiece, and then you were also buying liquid on top of that, you were walking out with like $200-300. So to think about adding onto that a $50 JUUL purchase is effectively a companion item. That really resonated with people. And it also turns out there were 10,000 of those stores across the nation. And so what we very quickly saw in our data was, hey, these 10,000 vape shops are cleaning the clock of these 10,000 convenience stores, and they're like 5% the cost to execute. So it was something like, I'm extrapolating because I haven't looked at the numbers in over 10 years, but it was something like we had 10x the sales velocity and we were spending 90% less. Right. And we were like, okay, well, that's clear then. Start orienting all of our efforts against those stores. And we did that for about a year, and then we just took off because we started selling to the people that were really open-minded and really and then those people became mouthpieces for the product. They started championing us. They started talking about us because it was a great product. Like JUUL's success was a really, really good product with top-tier sales execution. That was the 1-2 punch.
Got it. And also I'd imagine too, it probably in terms of shelf space for vape shops, is probably maybe quite a bit easier in terms of getting better shelf space there versus a convenience store, which there's it seems like there's a lot more competition, a lot more products that actually they're thinking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. When I talk about the cost of execution, you're talking about hundreds of dollars to effectively buy a placement in a convenience store, in addition to the trade programs and rebate programs, promotional programs. A vape shop is just, the cost of a person going in and convincing the owner, usually owner operator, to drop something on the counter, which those counters are much bigger. Right? If you've been in a vape shop before, they tend to have like counters that go the whole way around with tons of space. And again, just the time to really learn about a product, be educated on it, and then turn around and then regurgitate that education and educate their own consumers.
Was that also maybe tricky? And I don't know too much about gas stations, but I would think that vape shops are all independently owned. So you're kind of going into, it's a single channel. So in terms of scaling, was that maybe one of the challenges when it actually came to vape shops versus gas stations? I'd imagine a lot of independently owned gas stations, but also I would think too, there's also you can get to a certain amount of scale with one customer.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And I think there's an allure for a lot of young brands. I've seen it in our own portfolio. I've seen it across a lot of founders I've spoken with. They say, we're going to go to, we've had some success on Amazon or Instagram or whatever it is, and we're going to go do Target or Walmart or 7-Eleven. And that's their first foray, is like, we're going to go in 3,000, 5,000, 7,000 locations. And you're like, well, I really hope it works. Truly, I really hope it does. But you're going for such broad scale that there's almost an illusion of like, well, all it takes is one touch point and I get that scale really quickly, and surely that's a good thing. But you got to be inspecting those stores, right? I mean, if you go do a deal with like 7-Eleven, for example, which is 7,000 locations, probably more than that at this point, and you walk out and you say, great, they're going to put us in 7,000 locations, we're good to go. And you're not like going up and following up in those stores, you're not going to be anywhere near the performance level that you think you're going to get. Not because they're not doing what they say they're going to do, but just, it's really challenging to enforce great execution across 7,000 locations. I mean, these numbers are really high. Think about the number of Starbucks and McDonald's across the country. And now imagine you're trying to replicate McDonald's, right? Like, except you're one person and you're just taking one sales call at headquarters. It's not enough. So I think there's almost like a fallacy of, I get immediate scalability through a relationship, through a chain account, but that's a really dangerous place to live in because you really do need to be resourcing it almost to the same degree that you would be anyways if you were going independent. And you're taking on a lot more risk and you're paying a lot more for it.
Yeah, that's a great point, because you have one customer, one buyer, whether it's Target or Walmart. That doesn't mean that then they're going to kind of take care of it, and that of course that you're going to sell and that it's easier. You have to manage those stores like they're actually independent.
Absolutely, themselves. Yeah. So on a macro perspective, what's your merchandising program? What's your promotional calendar? From an execution standpoint, is the merchandising actually going up? Are your price tags up? I mean, truly, like basic stuff. I've been in stores auditing young brands before, and there's no price tags. That's happened a lot more than one time, where I meet a brand and I'm like, okay, I like what I hear. I like a lot of the things I'm seeing, and they tell me about their great distribution partnership. I check 3 stores. I don't see a single price tag in any of the 3 stores. And then you go to try to buy it, and the clerk is like confused. They're looking it up in like an index reference, and you're like, hey, I don't think you have the distribution and the execution that you think you have.
And the velocities, yeah. When did you realize that you were all at JUUL, that the vape shops were working, and that, hey, it's time to expand beyond the vape shops?
Again, this is where I got to give credit to the team. Like the way I operate in general is I'm much better at reacting to information than creating something out of thin air. Like I'm not a Steve Jobs, go up on the mountaintop and come up with something. Mm-hmm. So the vape shops insight was really only possible because we were already in those vape shops. I know one of the questions you often ask me when we're catching up is like, what's your advice you would give to people? And part of it on the retail side is like, you kind of want to test a lot while not overextending yourself, because you don't know you can guess what your vape shop equivalent's going to be, but you really don't know, because, as clear as it seems now for me to say like, oh yeah, vape shops like JUUL, in 2015, that wasn't clear at all. We were getting feedback from some that we seemed like a big tobacco product. Like we weren't authentic enough. We were thinking that we'd have better luck in like tobacco shop, like high quality tobacco shops. We truly didn't know where we were going to over-index, and it was only by having a sufficient enough breadth of testing locations, while at the same time not overextending ourselves to a point where we were trashing our runway, that allowed us to gather those insights to then rejigger our route to market to then be ultimately successful.
Got it. What did Hypergrowth kind of feel like from the inside, and what were some of that lessons from that experience that shaped how you invest today?
Hypergrowth, it's funny, we always joke around about a lot of ex-jewelers joke about this. Like, we can't really point to a day that was fun outside of the day we exited. It's hard. Like, growing that fast is tremendously difficult, both in terms of the amount of work you put in, but also the stress that you carry. And it's something that I always try to warn people about when I'm recruiting or talking to young founders. If you really want to experience hypergrowth, be ready for it to dominate like almost every waking moment for the next several years of your life, because you may actually be working less hours than you ever worked in, let's say, like Goldman banking, but your indirect hours, like the amount of time that your thoughts are consumed and your emotional state is consumed, are much, much greater than that. I know there's that maybe a year or two ago is what the NVIDIA founder, right? As someone asked, like, would you do it all over again? He was like, no. and it's funny. I read that and I was like, I know exactly what he means. Like, I get it. I totally get it. It's like, it's not just the, people are always like, oh yeah, like you got to be able to grind, you got to be able to hustle. Like, there's the emotional, psychological component that's almost impossible to really communicate, which is like, you're going to be on edge from the day you start until the day you exit.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I actually love that interview with the NVIDIA founder. I know exactly what you're talking about. And additionally for, JUUL being a rocket ship, it was also a lightning rod as well, right? From the inside, how did you think about the responsibility of scaling a product that was clearly resonating, right? It was scaling like crazy. It was resonating with adults. It was also facing a lot of backlash too around, youth usage, for example, and also regulatory backlash. How were you thinking about this at the time while you're at JUUL?
And I think that was really my number one lesson from the lightning rod of JUUL was like, wow, I don't want to be surprised like that again, ever. Like, that was tough. The world was surprised by JUUL and JUUL was surprised by the world's reception of it. Internally, like every single presentation started with, we exist to eliminate cigarettes and provide reduced harm alternatives. Like, that's what we were in for. Like, we were there to save smokers' lives. And very, very quickly, we found out the world thought that we were something wildly different than that. And I think that's a real challenge for especially small companies and small teams.
I think what's also interesting is when we back up a little bit, and you said that why you all weren't successful in gas stations, and it was because, obviously price point, cigarettes versus JUUL, very, very different. But also you're going against people that smoke cigarettes that have been smoking cigarettes probably for a long time and have that habit.
You usually have to give someone a product that is both better and better for them. And that's how you get them to make a switch. So we had decades of data on gum and patches and therapy. And the reality is people were failing to quit tobacco. People were failing to quit smoking. They wanted to. It was at this point, the numbers are so out of date. But back in 2015, it was something like 97% of cigarette smokers have tried to quit smoking. And the average one had tried to quit at least 3 times. And 80% were not successful. And they were trying everything. And the reality was they were being given the better for you alternative that was a product. And so JUUL was a better cigarette that was also better for you, full stop. That's what it was. It was absolutely designed by smokers. James and Adam were lifelong smokers for smokers.
This episode is brought to you by Glimpse. Glimpse is an AI-powered end-to-end deductions management service that's focused on recovering revenue from KeHE, UNFI, Amazon, and Target for consumer brands. They centralize deductions with backups. They fully handle disputing on your behalf, the brand's behalf, and streamline the accounting process. For more information, check out tryglimpse.com and let them know that Mike sent you. I was going to ask, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to. Do you think JUUL should have been banned?
Oh, definitely not.
Definitely not.
Oh, absolutely not. We were banned. It's funny. I know. We pretended like we were regulating the category, and really all we did was ban a single American company. It's the state of the regulatory environment today. I maybe this is a tinfoil theory, but I actually think the lack of product regulation happening right now across I'm just calling it the vice category. Psilocybin, ketamine, kava kratom, nicotine across the illegal vapes, THC. I actually think that it's a direct outcome of the way that JUUL is treated, because I think it turns out that it's pretty, one, from a regulatory policy standpoint, all that banning JUUL did was open the door to a flood of black market vapes with highly questionable quality levels. 2, it's very politically unfavorable to take away the thing that people like, right? Look at prohibition. It tends to not go very well. I haven't worked there in 5-6 years. I don't actively track this anymore. I'm kind of going off of general sentiment and publicly available data sources, but it certainly seems like things have improved considerably. I think that gentle regulation and intelligent regulation are absolutely required for vice markets. A lack of regulation or heavy-handed regulation, right? The two extremes tend to just completely break down. And so I think that effectively the JUUL ban was really damaging for the market and for American consumers.
As an investor, how do you think about, since obviously just because of your experience of JUUL, how do you think about this duality of building something that dominates the market, but also sits at the center of cultural and regulatory backlash? How do you think about that as you're analyzing products to potentially invest in?
It's funny. I get asked this question a lot. If you are actually successful, if the whole point of venture, right, when it comes down to it, is you want to do big things to bigger things. That's the whole point. You don't want to invest in the company that's going to take 1% market share and exit. Fine. Okay, cool. It's a financial outcome. You want to invest in a company that's going to completely overhaul an entire category. That's venture. That's why in our heart of hearts, everybody's in the startup world and in the venture capital world, is because you want to back the opportunities and be a part of the journeys that are completely disruptive. If and when you're successful, it's a controversy, because you're getting rid of the status quo, and people are very uncomfortable with change. And so it's inevitable. If you are successful at doing what venture is supposed to do, you're going to have to deal with the other side of it. I can't think of a single runaway VC-backed success over the last 20 years. And some people might say, well, this is VC's problem. I disagree. I think it's just it's human nature to be fearful of new innovation and change. And as soon as you get big enough, the tide turns. I dropped out of business school. Everybody made fun of me. Everyone said, oh my God, I can't believe you're dropping out to go work for a vape company. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? In the first year, I would show the product to people and they'd be like, it's a little weird. I don't get it. The second year, I'd show the product to people and they'd be like, that's actually really cool. The third year, people would be like, holy crap, I can't believe that like you're at JUUL. The fourth year, people were like, how dare you work at JUUL? Like, speed ran. Seriously, speed ran.
Wow.
And you see it like look at Tesla and how like the perception of Tesla has changed over the last 10 years, and look at how the perception of Facebook has changed over the last 10 years. Like you can't build a truly successful disruptive company without the tide turning against you and people hating you. It's the classic like at first people tell you you're crazy, then they cheer you on, then they turn against you. There's just like I guess you could try to find that sweet spot of like staying medium sized. And a lot of people do make that decision. But I think like the exciting part of venture is like going for broke and really trying to disrupt a whole category, and you're going to make enemies by doing so.
Yeah, I appreciate those examples. Certainly other ones come to mind as well.
Eliminate the actual company names I'm saying of other people, but like, yeah, you see my point. Like I can't think of a company that hasn't been sued.
No, totally. 100%. You often emphasize, and I know like in our chats, you often talk about, operators investing in operators, which obviously you're an operator. You obviously were at JUUL and obviously were very successful at JUUL. What do you see differently about founders or markets compared to an investor who hasn't scaled a consumer business?
The best example I like to give is a really good classically trained investor partner, to be clear, a good one. You'll get to a board meeting and they'll say, here's where you guys need to be to unlock your next round of funding. And right, it's like, you guys need to double your revenue. You need to get your gross margin to X, and that's going to unlock, funding at roughly this level. And here's a list of people that you could talk to. That's a great investor partner. An investor operator partner, I believe, should provide that, but then also be able to go one step further and say, hey, when we say you need to double your revenue to get to that funding target, because let's be clear, that's hard. They can actually work with you on planning on how to double your revenue and how to do it appropriately. And not just say like, hey, you need to double your gross margin, but like help you get to doubling your gross margin because they've been there and they've done it before. To me, that's all the difference in the world. Right? Of like, you need to do something. Sure. Great. Versus, hey, you need to do it. And also here's how you do it. Not every founder is receptive. Not every founder wants to get the how. But at minimum, knowing as an investor kind of what that takes, I think makes you a better investor, and I think it also makes you a much, much better ongoing partner.
No, that makes a lot of sense in terms of that. Do you also find like yourself and other operating investors that have operating experience when you actually see missed gains or the company maybe isn't moving as quickly as you'd like? Do you find that investors that don't have operating experience that they're less maybe forgiving or the same, or do you find that maybe you are actually less forgiving?
It's really funny. It goes both ways. I've worked with some pure investors who are just like super laissez-faire. They're like, it's one of 30, like, okay, it happens. Others who are white knuckling it and like, we said you needed to double revenue. Where the hell were you? Were you asleep at the wheel? What the going on? I like to think that we approach it with a slightly more like, I think that we are, because of our operator backgrounds, we will actually skew a little bit more to the like, come on guys, what's going on? But if there's truly good reasons, we also understand that, right? It's like we're in I think better position to kind of understand like, oh yeah, like that's a real reason for the miss, and that's not a real miss. It's just a month slowdown, right? There's a big because there's a difference between like missing a revenue plan that's fundamentally altering the trajectory of the business and clearing stage gates or roadblocks that are getting you to that exponential growth curve. Like those are two pretty different things. So I think it varies. I think like our familiarity with the jobs to be done can be really helpful, but I think it can also be a little dangerous from the viewpoint of a founder who is kind of like, hey man, let me breathe. I'm doing this for the first time. And like you sitting there as the experienced operator, you're like, okay, but can we speed up the learning curve a little bit? I'm here to help you speed it up. I'm not just saying go faster. I'm saying like, but like, can we do the right things more easily? So I don't know. It's a little nuanced, I'd say.
Are there operators that you actually don't think that you'd be a good fit for in terms of actually being like having Cartograph Ventures invest in their companies, even if they're great operators?
I think so. I grew up, reading like the intelligent investor and like really buying into the kind of Warren Buffett whole investment principle of like invest in fundamentals. And I think that there are VCs out there who are really, really, really good at treating like the stock as the product, and like playing the valuation game exceptionally well. And I think for some founders, like that's a great way to go. Us personally, like that's not in our ethos. It's not in our DNA. We're much more on the belief system of like, if you build the right fundamentals, everything else comes with it. In an ideal world, you take money from us and the other people, but if it comes down to us versus them, I think that's the biggest differentiating point I can think of is like, we are not the people who are going to be able to play that valuation game and like, hype the company up well beyond its means or well beyond where it's at and like be able to flip it quickly and like with the hope of flipping it quickly. We're not like bubble creators. And I don't say that with any, like, I think there's a lot of value. Like that's an impressive skill set. And I always tell founders, I'm like, I wish I had that skill set. It would be way more fun than my skill set of actually having to build the company. Like my version of it sucks. But yeah, I think that there's like, it's a pretty big delta between how we view investing at the venture stage versus how another fund might view investing at the venture stage. And it's a little funny to me that like, I've never actually had a founder ever in a meeting, like really try to understand us or our approach or how we think about investing. And I've never had a founder say like, hey, I don't think this is going to be a great fit from our side. Candidly, like I've had multiple LP meetings where like pretty early on, I'm like, oh, this isn't going to be a fit, right? They're like, hey, we tend to like, we like macro funds, fifth cycle funds. And you're like, oh, I can tell you right now, this isn't going to be a fit.
Yeah.
Do you want to keep chatting for the next 30 minutes? Because I'm more than happy to build a relationship. But, all expectations of funding are sort of off the table. I think I've been surprised that I haven't experienced that with a founder in the few years I've been doing this for.
Like I'm even thinking if there's second time or third time founders that you might back, right? That maybe might not be looking for operational help or guidance. Like, is that still interesting to you to back like a second or third time?
Oh, absolutely.
A second or third time founder. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of our companies, two of our companies now actually are repeat founders. And I'd actually say, ironically, like we're even better with them because the language barrier is just like the communication is tight. I'm not even joking, but like I can accomplish more in 5 minutes with a repeat founder or repeat operator than I can in like literally weeks with a new founder operator. And it's I'm not exaggerating. Like that is the delta because the person who's done it before, you spend a lot less time on the prescriptive how you get there, and the conversation is much more about like, hey, here's where we need to get to, and here's like the high level thinking on how we're going to go approach it. And then they can kind of go execute. Whereas a lot of first time founders, like they're sitting there being like, okay, I get the where I need to be and the high level of how I get there, but then how do I actually do the how? And you're like, oh, so I guess it would be like the where I need to get to, the what I need to do, and then how do I do the what? It's like that extra layer can take a lot. And obviously we're very happy to provide it. But with like repeat founders, repeat operators, it's like it's really, really efficient. It's super efficient. And I'm sure that classically trained investors would say the same thing. I've heard, we've gotten great feedback from our repeat operators and founders that they really like working with us because of our backgrounds, because we are often speaking the same language or on the same page about a lot of things.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I'd imagine also it's also with repeat founders, it's not only like the strategy, but it's also like the actual tactics itself. That's going to what it's actually going to take to actually solve. They actually understand what actually like the true problem is versus maybe what fake problems are, or maybe just less important problems. Like what's actually like the fundamental problems in terms of what could be like the bottleneck in terms of growth, and kind of understand that like a lot more easily as second or third time.
Yeah,
I know that you've scaled. Yeah,
I used to work with a guy who I love this quote. He was like, really successful founders or operators, like they don't think that they're running a startup. They basically internalize the day they launch, I'm already running a successful company. It just happens to be early on, right? Like, and that's very different than most first-time founders who are approaching it from man, I'm putting everything I got into this thing. I sure hope it works. We'll see what happens. It's just a completely different mentality of like, oh, no, like this is a successful business. We're just 12 months before the numbers impress anybody, but we're already there, right? It's like the day we incorporated, the day we released our brand and our product, like we're already a great concern. And it's just that mindset shift is all the difference in the world. It changes how you recruit. When you recruit, your willingness to deploy capital, your willingness to invest in growth programs, your confidence in growth programs, the speed with which you make decisions, like everything changes when you fundamentally shift your thinking.
How do you think about different categories to invest in, or specifically regulated categories? Because when you look at founders now, how do you evaluate if they actually have the stomach or skill set for navigating complexities like that, as you did with JUUL?
If you're going to do business in a regulated category, expect a fast start, expect fast growth, and a lot of pain on the back end. Just full, like, it doesn't matter what category you're in. If you're in the vice world, that is going to be your path. And that's what I tell every single, they're like, oh, my numbers look great. This looks good. Look at this. Look at that. And like, you're like, great. It's amazing. The second you achieve your personal objectives and you get this business to where you want it to be, people are going to be mad at, people are going to be angry with you. And like, you're going to have to deal with that. So, well, let's say like a typical consumer company might take 6 to 8 years to build. You go into Vice, maybe it takes like 3 to 5 years to build. But we don't touch Vice anymore for this reason. Everybody wants us to. Everybody wants Cartograph to do more Vice investments, and it's candidly been a personal decision to just walk away.
Now we're seeing in the world of nicotine, we're obviously seeing nicotine pouches just explode, and obviously Zyn explode. When you compare this cycle to JUUL's rise, what feels similar and what feels different?
It's happened a lot more quietly. Schumer out of New York was like, wouldn't stop talking about JUUL for a very long time. I think I saw him make like one comment on Zyn. It's just not getting nearly the same degree of emphatic coverage that JUUL got. I'll also say, like, I think Zyn is a much more familiar product. JUUL wasn't just a surprising nicotine product. People didn't know what it was. Like I remember like someone being like, is there meth in here? What is this? You're like, no, it's a nicotine vapor. It says it on the box, like 5% nicotine. That's the active ingredient. Like, that's how foreign, again, it's really hard to remember the world 10 years ago. But like, no one knew what these products were. They were very foreign to people. Zyn, you had chewing tobacco, you had hundreds of years of chewing tobacco, dip, and then you had snus, which Zyn is largely like a Gen 2 of, Camel snus pouches, and then you had Zyn. And so I think the familiarity of like, oh yeah, it's an oral tobacco product. That familiarity, I think, does a lot, right? Like, again, going back to this whole concept of people are more scared of change than they are of anything else. I think that Zyn has had the huge benefit of seeming like just another product. Like, if Zyn had been a pack of cigarettes and suddenly like everybody's smoking cigarettes again, I don't know. I actually don't think there'd be equal outcry as there was to when JUUL took over, because JUUL was just so alien to so many people. And I think it's been a big tailwind for Zyn. I also think a big tailwind for Zyn was like, were we really going to do, just like, picture you're a media agency, you're like, are we really going to do JUUL 2.0? Like, you've had 2 Trump presidencies to report on. That's getting you click rates. Like, why do JUUL 2.0 as a story? It's like a little less interesting to do it a second time. It's like doing a rerun. So I think that for a lot of reasons, it's almost like there was so much freneticism and emotion around the JUUL saga, and it created this like 6-year overhang where like, Kava, again, I already listed the products, but like, look at all of the gray market explosion, all these gray market products in the Vice category and within nicotine and across the board. And like, you don't really see a lot of chatter about them. And even if you see it pop up, it doesn't get nearly the traction that JUUL was getting in 2018, 2019. So no, I think Zyn's been much cleaner. I think it's been a much cleaner launch. Zyn was also launched by a traditional big tobacco company. JUUL was an independent company that was destroying big tobacco market share. There's probably something to that. Not to sound too much like a conspiracy theory podcast host, but you're like, okay, like, the company run by a legacy big tobacco company didn't have any like really big hubbub about it, and the company run by an independent company, or the product run by an independent company that had basically the exact same growth curve and same story, was treated wildly differently by virtually everybody.
I see what you're saying. Do you think that, well, first of all, on nicotine pouches, I know you've seen a lot of kind of startups that are building or creating their own nicotine pouches and selling them, and there's obviously Zyn. Are they actually like different? Is there actually differentiation within nicotine pouches that actually is interesting, or is it kind of what there is? Yeah.
You're definitely seeing some Me Too, some lookalikes, right? Of just products that are very much like Zyn. But I've actually been impressed with all of the variations people have found. Higher nicotine strength, moist versus dry, compostable and more natural ingredients versus I've heard that like Zyn has a lot of plastic as a base. I can't verify if that's true or not. Higher price points, lower price points. chewable versions, breaker versions that release more flavor. You're seeing I just listed like 6 or 7 unique pouch approaches that are all looking to largely just release nicotine through your mucous membrane. Now compare that to like the traditional tobacco category where like a menthol crusher was like one innovation in 5 years. I think the pace of play that you're seeing in the pouch category, you're seeing crazy levels of funding. You're seeing an explosion in new brands, and you're seeing a lot of shots on goal to see if you can really displace Zyn.
Do you think the nicotine industry is in a harm reduction era, or is it just reinventing itself with new products?
Oh, you had that one locked and loaded, ready to go. It's a little tricky. Like I know the data on vapes. I don't know the data on pouches. I sort of choose to believe that the pouches, so oral tobacco is less harmful for you than cigarettes. Still not zero harm, but it is less harmful. So in general, like basically everything's better than a cigarette. Like, so no, it's a tricky question, right? Because it's like, oh, are we in a reduced harm period? You're like, well, is the percent of nicotine users using cigarettes dropping? If so, yes, we're in a reduced harm era.
Right.
You then say, oh, but aren't we just perpetuating nicotine or continuing to grow the nicotine category? That's asking a pretty big question, which is why do we think the way we think about nicotine today? Why do we think the way? I would encourage everyone to think about that. Like, what is it about nicotine? And the answer is it's cigarettes. It's cigarettes killing people and being an incredibly deadly product and being associated with nicotine. Obviously, nicotine is the reason for the cigarettes in the first place. I do think that we're going through this big question mark period right now where you have a lot of people exploring this concept of, do we understand nicotine as does each individual understand their personal relationship with nicotine as a chemical in the same way that, I have a personal relationship with alcohol, I have a personal relationship with THC, I have a personal relationship with nicotine, I have a personal relationship with caffeine. Like there's certain amounts and doses that make me feel good, make me feel I took Adderall once in my life. It made me crushingly depressed for 3 days. I never took it again. Like that's my personal relationship with Adderall. Everybody engages with these, ingredients in their own own personal way. And I think that right now what's happening is thanks to these reduced harm alternatives, a lot of people are starting to question their relationship with nicotine and whether or not they put it into a hard vice category like alcohol or THC, or maybe more of the soft vice category, other more common stimulants. I don't have an answer, just to be clear. I don't have an answer. I think this is very much up to each person to do their own research on and decide where they fall in that spectrum. But we're definitely going through a period of time right now where that question is being asked sort of en masse. Like open up TikTok, open up social media, and tons of discussion around do we understand nicotine? I'm intentionally saying it in a very safe way. So, open up your own social media platform and see how people are talking about it. I'm not going to talk about it that way.
No, that's very fair. But I appreciate the conclusion, or even just how to think about it in terms of nicotine and also cigarettes, and cigarettes being the most deadly out of
off script, yes. Right? I actually believe that nicotine and caffeine are effectively the same. They're very similar. They're very, very similar. Both are incredibly addictive. Both are stimulants. Both stimulate you in different ways. Caffeine gives you more of a body energy with a little bit of freneticism. Nicotine gives you more mental clarity in addition to the mental stimulation. I think that that's what people are going through right now. I talk to guys who are taking Zyn pouches at 6 a.m. to go to the gym as a workout.
Wow, interesting.
I don't. But that's what I'm seeing right now with nicotine. I'm seeing people start to explore, hey, maybe this is more close to we've been treating it like alcohol, but maybe it's more like caffeine.
Wow. And it's interesting because you're the CEO of a caffeine business.
You've noticed I have not actually set, so the number of times, if you notice, I keep not drawing a direct comparison to caffeine intentionally because I don't want to plant that seed in people's minds.
I will not. Make sure, John, the caffeine and nicotine, we are taking that entire part out.
Yeah.
Entire part out. Yes.
Because I actually do believe that caffeine and nicotine are basically the same. Like me selling this caffeine product, I am back to sell. I am mentally selling nicotine all over again. With the difference of the delivery platforms are demonstrably safer. This, come on, this isn't giving you
so easy. Right? Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, if we ever got to, and we've talked internally about developing a nicotine spray for that reason. If you can develop truly, you're just getting the nicotine and nothing else. I mean, caffeine's addictive. I use both, and I go through periods, usually 2 to 4 weeks, where I go cold turkey to kind of go through it. And it's interesting. My cold turkey withdrawal for nicotine is craving. I crave it. I'm I get like annoyed. It's hard to explain, but it's like, man, I want that in the same way I really want like a big slice of cheese pizza right now, and I can't have it, and that's annoying. Caffeine is like crushing headaches, irritability, and like feeling like. But the nicotine one lasts longer. Yeah. The nicotine one lasts like 2 to 4 weeks, whereas the caffeine one, I'm through it in about like 5 to 7 days.
That's interesting. That's wow. So that's why it's so hard to stop.
Yeah. But anyways, I know we're going way off topic. I'm eating up.
No, not at all. I guess backing up, I know we talked about obviously nicotine. We talked about gray areas. The overall consumer venture market. Do you think consumer venture is becoming more hits driven overall?
Absolutely. You're seeing rip-roaring successes from great businesses, by the way, right? Like you're seeing the recent funding on Groons, David, which is going great. Lucky Energy, like you're seeing really, really, really strong performance for the few winners who are just like clearly ahead of the pack. And I think everyone else is kind of languishing. This is, I think it's the sort of natural, if you think about the venture market evolving over the last 8 years, right? 2019, 2020 was super heated. If you had a render of a cool looking product, you were getting $2 million to go launch it. Then there was like the 2022, 2023 clapdown where you were like, hey, we're doing $5 million in sales. We're profitable. We're growing like crazy. And VC investors were like, sorry. Right? Like, yeah, wrong time. And now it's opening back up, but you're definitely seeing, picture you're in the investor shoes, like you want to jump onto the deal that everyone else wants to do. It's like things are finally opening back up. So you don't want to be the person who overextends themselves, makes the same mistake you made in 2019. So I think you're seeing a lot more piling on happening to the few key winners. But those winners are winning. Like I think there's real performance there. I think it's still tough to be kind of in the middle to bottom of the pack.
This episode is brought to you by Glimpse. Glimpse is an AI-powered end-to-end deductions management service that's focused on recovering revenue from KeHE, UNFI, Amazon, and Target for consumer brands. They centralize deductions with backups. They fully handle disputing on your behalf, the brand's behalf, and streamline the accounting process. For more information, check out tryglimpse.com and let them know that Mike sent you. Yeah, it was interesting. I agree with you. It seems like in terms of how funds are deploying, it seems a bit more concentrated than before.
Yeah.
When it comes to the winners, or just a lot more concentrated rather it being a bit more spread out. Yeah, totally agree with you. I agree with you there. If you were to draw a map of the most exciting frontiers in consumer right now, where are you most eager to place your bets, or what are some of like the most interesting areas right now to invest in are?
It's funny. I actually made some notes on this one because I was happy with my cleverness on one of them. The first is the consumers are becoming cowboys, right? The cowboy diet, red meat, cigarettes and coffee, protein, nicotine, caffeine, right? Like we're going through like the American consumer is going through a cowboy renaissance right now. Everything is protein, nicotine, caffeine. You're starting to see caffeine pop up in everything. You're starting to see protein definitely pop up in everything. And then of course you're starting to see this massive explosion in nicotine products. That's like my just CPG hat of like, that's big. Outside of that, there's two more esoteric worlds that, that people would argue whether or not it's true consumer or not. I think people refer to this in of software. I think about like the Steve Jobs mantra of, I'm going to butcher it, but it was something like, you should never be 3 clicks away from whatever you want to do. Streamlined UI, streamlined UX. I tried to pay a plumber yesterday and it took me 27, I counted 27 clicks to pay the guy. Through my phone, which is completely insane. And if I'm sure this is resonating with anybody who hears this, you're like, oh my God, yes, it takes me so long and so many steps to do literally anything. I want to turn my TV on, 5 button clicks. I want to change the channel, 4 button clicks. And you're like, that's wild. That's just totally bananas. Cars being the thing that everyone started bitching about with touch screens, wanting the controls. So all this to say, like, whether it's an AI tool or something, like someone's going to figure out how to reduce those clicks, and that's going to be wildly successful. It sounds like such a small thing, but it's such a major friction point in every consumer's lives. The third one is online identity. I just think like in my lifetime, we're going to move away from anonymity on the web. It's going to happen. And the people to like really figure out how to capitalize on that and take advantage of it are going to do quite well for themselves. Whether it's crypto enabled or sponsored by the government, who the hell knows? Or if it's going to be Meta. I know Meta's been working towards it, but when I think about the frontier, it's online identity and the way that we engage with our your average apps or consumer products today, which I think are like both are completely broken and desperate for a solve that we haven't actually seen happen yet.
No, I really appreciate that. I mean, I think that's really interesting, the Cowboy diet. I mean, it reminds me a little bit on the protein side. It reminds me a little bit of my doctor, who's a traditional doctor. Just, I just went to him and we were talking about diets, and I finally just asked him, what's your diet? What do you eat? And he seemed kind of surprised that I actually asked that question. It seemed like other patients didn't actually ask him. And he said, well, right now I'm doing the lion diet. And I said, what's that? And he said, I only eat red meat and salt. That's the only thing I actually intake. And water. And I said, wow, that's really, really just, anyway, it was just kind of interesting. I thought for this, traditional doctor that that actually is what he eats. But I think he was just doing that though but anyway, consumers, how do you think about also moats in consumer? Because kind of part of the reason why maybe consumer isn't as sexy as a category as other categories is, hey, there really aren't any moats in consumer. And what actually matters to you when it comes to consumer brands and consumer tech? What is the moat, or is there a moat?
I mean, there's absolutely a moat, and it's the product. Like I remember this is 10 years ago, but I was reading a case study in business school that talked about like how the first mover advantage was a fallacy, because it was usually the second and third movers who won. And the reason was that the first mover usually didn't have the best product because by definition, they didn't have something to react to. They didn't have something to innovate upon. Whereas the second and third movers tended to be able to see like what was resonating with the first mover and then make it better and really execute well on a great product. And then the second and third movers tended to be the ones who established, market dominance and then survived for a very long time. I think, I mentioned a couple products earlier, like the David Bar, Groons. Like I think that they have great products, and I think it's going to be really challenging to replicate their success because you either have to make a better product or a product. Making a product that's just as good isn't a viable reason for a consumer to switch. And so I think it's all about when you enter the market and how good your product is. If you enter with the best product and you enter at the right time, that's a real moat.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense that it's really all about the product. And actually, if it actually is a great product and also differentiated, that could actually be like a real moat. And then of course you build the brand in the future with that.
If all you're doing is white labeling a product with a new brand, I agree, you don't really have a moat. But like that shouldn't be a catch-all to all consumer. Right, like that's lazily painting with too broad of a brush. But if you have a novel, unique product, I think like that's the moat.
What goes into your decision in terms of retail expansion? Like, let's say you do have a differentiated product. In your opinion, when does it make sense to actually move fast in retail versus actually go deep, or kind of go brick by brick, as they say?
Yeah, it's sort of an art mixed with the science, right? Like the science is you need to see growing velocities every month to know that you have a healthy product that is worth expanding. The art is what's the sample size required to have confidence in that? How broad do you go early? What level of investment do you want to put behind it? But I'm a big believer in like, don't go broad before you know you have success on your hands. Like keep it as small as you possibly can, balanced with, is that sample size big enough to give you the confidence you need to go bigger? So is that 100 locations? Is that 500 locations? Is it 10,000 locations? Hopefully it's not 10,000 locations. But like pick the number for effectively like a test and truly test. Don't test it because someone's telling you to test it. Test it because you want to test it. Test it because like you need to know how your product is actually going to do. Because if it can't perform in 100 well-executed locations, it's definitely not going to perform in 10,000 moderately executed locations. It's your crystal ball.
Based on your current portfolio, what have you learned so far about underwriting consumer companies that actually survive and actually do well?
It's funny. I've learned this as an investor. I heard this all the time when I was early on. I would always say like, oh yeah, I'm a big believer in product and markets, and I almost back those exclusively. I've definitely learned that the people matter. I think that starting off in this job, seriously, starting off in this job, I kind of assumed everybody would care as much as I cared, and I've learned that's not the case, right? Like you meet a founder who has a great opportunity on their hands, and you're like, oh, they have a great opportunity on their hands. Surely they're going to do everything in their power to make this a success, and then you realize that they actually don't care as much as you would care, and so that people component has really turned out to be the most important one of like which founders are willing to make it through that really, really first 3 to 5 years of just crawling through the muck and the mud of finding product market fit. That requires emotional and mental fortitude and also dedication to what they're working on. So I think that's been my biggest learning is like when I look at our front runners, it's founders who are willing to make it through that tough period. And when I look at members of our portfolio who haven't done as well, they largely closed up at the first sign of distress, first sign of trouble.
Yeah, I remember one investor I had before. It's that do you actually trust a jockey or do you trust the horse? What are you actually betting on? And kind of that, and that's interesting, that shift. Do you have 15 more minutes or you got a hard stop?
No, go for it.
Dude, you're the man. This has been so much fun. For you, when does it actually make sense to get involved in your portfolio companies? And we were talking about earlier about since you're obviously with your JUUL experience and your operations experience, you like to be pretty involved with your portfolio companies. But when does it actually make sense to operate like you're doing with All Day, for example?
Yeah. So one, just in terms of like the investor-operator relationship, each company dynamic is completely unique and different, and it's entirely about what the founder wants and also a little bit of what the founder needs. So in terms of like how heavy do we lean in, like you have the experienced operators who are doing it for the second or third time, they talk to us a whole lot less than our first-time founders. And that's okay, because we will give our first-time founders as much time as they possibly need, as much guidance as they possibly need, maybe more than they want, to help them become second-time successful founders and operators. In terms of the decision to jump in as CEO of All Day, I mentioned earlier that like the true reason that we're all in venture, I choose to believe, is like we want to do big things to big things. We want to disrupt entire categories. We don't want to carve out a 1% market share and flip a company. Like, we want to have a real shot on goal at fundamentally changing how people do things, like how the world works. Like that's fun. That's exciting. When I look at All Day, the caffeine category, it's like, it's something like 90% of the global population takes caffeine every day. Everyone takes it in the same way, which is they drink it. That hasn't changed since coffee was invented 1,000 years ago, probably, tea before then. And, this is a patent protected product on a true novel, delivery platform of caffeine delivery that changes how caffeine is experienced by the body and how people experience caffeine, period. And I just find that too exciting of an opportunity to pass up on. So that effectively was the entire decision-making process. Great founders, great team. Obviously there was more that could be done by someone who'd seen it fully before instead of just being on the armchair and more of an armchair expert. And I just couldn't look away from the opportunity. It's just so big and so interesting and so fun that I decided it just made a lot of sense to spend a lot of my time there.
Yeah, and I love the yellow. I love that your background is just decked out and all day stuff. Love it.
Yeah, nice little bottle. Here's the bottle. Nice little small. There's 5 Red Bulls worth of caffeine in here. 12 sprays, 32 milligrams per. You spray it, you get basically like you microdose the caffeine. It kicks in about 300% faster than all of it. So there's 2 techs in here. There's the caffeine salt technology that's enabling the uptake, the bioavailability uptake, like 300, 500%. So think about the biofeedback cycle and loop that you're getting. Like if you take a sip of coffee, you might be waiting 30 to 45 minutes to feel the full effect of that caffeine. This product, you're gonna be waiting like 10 to 20 minutes maximum. That means that you're responding to the caffeine faster, so you're taking more of an appropriate amount. So like over jittery, over caffeinated, like you can better manage your personal relationship with caffeine. It also lets you get that energy on demand when you want it. 0 calories, 0 sugar, vegan, all that stuff. That's my plug for All Day. But again, I look at that and I'm like, a truly novel delivery platform for one of the biggest consumed categories on the planet. Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I legitimately believe that it's better than drinking caffeine. If I didn't legitimately believe that, I wouldn't be spending time on it.
Yeah, that's wild. I'm so excited for the launch. That's so
Thank
cool.
you.
Let's do a quick lightning round if that's all right.
Yeah.
For you. When founders pitch you, what's the first thing you look for?
I really struggle with this one. Passion can be faked. Not even faked. It can be genuine, but it can be very temporary. I kind of hinted at it earlier, like how big is the market? is there a real problem they're looking to solve, and do they have a great solution to that problem? That's like the very, like, candidly, I'm still looking, even though the people person's really important, or the people part is really important, that's still that's still the first thing I react to, is like, oh wow, this person is doing a big thing to a big thing. I love that. That's our first stage gate. The second stage gate that we've learned over time is really feeling out the founder dynamic and the founder relationship.
What's the biggest red flag you see in founders' pitches?
It's effectively the converse of that. They're really excited about something, but maybe that something isn't a company. Maybe it's a one-time product. Maybe it's a great Kickstarter product or a one-time thing, but it's not a business. There's no business to be built around it. Or the market they're going after is just too small. So, I mean, even if they go spend 24/7 sleepless nights, tons of anxiety, 7 years of stress, like the opportunity is just not there relative to what they could be doing if they spent the exact same amount of time and effort on a different category. I think those are the two biggest, most common opportunities that I see in a lot of founders. And look, it's tough because founders are passionate people. Like, they're working on the things that they want to work on. The reality is it's not always going to fit what the investor's looking for in terms of like total opportunity size and where it's going to go. And you can always sniff out a TAM page. Like you always can, right? When you're like, wait a minute, I just backed into it, and this implies that like the customer base is bigger than the global population. Like, is there, like, you can always feel that out. So definitely don't try to like cook the books. Like you should, like, you're the one spending your life on it. Be genuine. Like, figure out for yourself if you want to build a company in $100 million category or $100 billion category, because they're both going to take the exact same amount of work.
Yeah. Great point. What's the single best piece of advice you've ever received in your career?
I used to get tons of crap advice because my early career was professional services, and 90% of the advice was oriented on like how to better fit into a large organization. So I had my first internship, I had a real life office space moment where I had 2 members of HR and my direct manager all give me feedback during the formal feedback cycle, because they didn't like that I wore headphones when I was doing modeling work in the middle of the afternoon in the office. And I was like, okay. I had no idea that wearing headphones is a problem. At no point, by the way, did anybody like gently nudge me and say, hey, we don't wear headphones here. Like, I had to wait for the official cycle review. So like for probably the first 10 years of my career, I tended to get feedback like that of like, hey, like, fit in better. Since getting into the venture world, I'd say the feedback has gotten way better. And I think the best thing I ever got is like, be more patient, slow down a little bit, particularly with people that I surround myself with. I like to move fast. I like to move faster than the average person. That can be uncomfortable for people, and like, that's okay. Just, help that be more comfortable for people, and also just be more patient in general, because you can't always accomplish everything in one day, and sometimes things just take time. So just in general, I've been described as a very impatient person, and I take that, like, that's probably the best feedback I've ever gotten, because I'm like, you're right, I am very impatient. I think it's critical to what I do in my success, but also I need to learn to be more patient.
What's one consumer trend everyone is hyping up, but that you think is a complete bubble?
Have you had anyone not say AI yet? You haven't, right? I mean,
actually, I know. Actually, I mean, to be honest, I don't think that anyone said. I don't think anyone has said AI for this.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I'll be the first for some reason.
The OG.
Alex,
right here.
I really should not be the OG.
The OG.
But AI is sort of in the phase right now of like 3D printers and self-driving cars and crypto, where you're like, really promising technology. I'm not saying the technology's not there. I'm saying that like the products that they're looking to create for us and the end use cases and the problems they're looking to solve, I think, are still a question mark. But we're funding them as if those problems have already been identified and those use cases and like those products are already being created. I mean, there's certain sectors where it is finding product market fit pretty quickly. But you specifically asked about consumer, and like, I think it's okay right now. But I don't like. Again, if it didn't have all the hyper, like truly, if it didn't have the hype around it, and even if you were getting pitched on like picture Mike, like, I have no pedigree, you've never met me before, or some 25-year-old walks in your office and pitches you on ChatGPT and you use it and you're like, okay, yeah, it's like, it's cool. And they're like, I want $100 billion valuation for that. You'd be like, that, I don't understand. It's not there yet. Right. So like, I think that's a definition of a bubble. Again, I'm not like the tech is that I hate for someone to listen to this or read this and be like, oh, like, this guy's saying, hey, he just doesn't understand the AI technology. I'm like, no, I get it. Really promising technology. I just think from like a market and market valuation standpoint, it's really gotten ahead of us. And I certainly wouldn't be like enthusiastic about putting my personal money into a lot of like consumer AI opportunities right now.
That's fair. I think what you're saying, I believe, is on the consumer side, you got to like see what actual problems are you solving? What are the actual use cases? Instead of just building, it seems like people are just kind of, or companies are just kind of building for the sake of building rather than building to actually solve problems.
Yeah. So like, consolidating a search engine behind like a chat wrapper, that's great. Is the information better? It's summarized, but the veracity sucks. I mean, come on, like who isn't reading the summary and then immediately spot checking it every single time, right? Like it just means it's not quite there yet, but it'll get there. And that's, obviously that's promising. But again, the issue is like Google already exists and Google can summarize their own search engine pretty damn well. So what's from a VC standpoint, like what net new company do you back that's going to do? It's just really tricky. And obviously there's much more people than myself tackling.
I think to your point, and we had another investor bring this up regarding AI. What's interesting about AI, which is, I think, different into most categories, is in AI, you actually have incumbents building AI products.
Yeah.
And you actually really have to ask the question, which is what everyone thinks is the dumbest question a VC to ask. But, if you're building a mustard, you're like, well, why wouldn't it, or building a ketchup, why wouldn't, Heinz just copy you, or whatever it is, right? Why wouldn't the incumbent just copy you of that product? That's like, what in venture they always kind of say, like, don't ask those questions. That's because the incumbents are not thinking about you at all. But it seems like in AI, what I think is tough for venture is the incumbents are building their own AI products and are investing billions building their own AI products. So it's just quite a different landscape from like that, from that perspective in terms of what the actual competitive set looks like.
Yeah, I think that is much better said than what I was trying to get at. It's very well summarized. Because for the big companies, it's existential. Like, why isn't the big company working on a new mustard? Because that's one of their 5,000 products, and if you make a better one, they'd prefer to buy you. Candidly, it's cheaper and less risky for them to wait for a winner and then just greenmail them a little bit to acquire it. Yeah. But in AI, like Google is like, no, like we like our cash flow a lot. And if people want to engage in search in this new way, like we should deliver that to them and just build it, because if we don't, then if people move away from us, like that's existential. And so they will absolutely innovate where it's absolutely required.
100%. What's one consumer category that you think no one's paying enough attention to?
The big thing right now is protein. I think fiber. I
agree with you.
It's so crazy. And
I 100% agree with you.
And what's crazy is I keep getting this reaction from people. Your reaction just now, 10 out of 10, that's the reaction I get from people, which only continues to reinforce my thinking here. There's like Metamucil. I mean, it's maybe this is a problem. It's like Metamucil is too good of a product, but the brand is still kind of like your grandparents, right? Like fiber brand. I take like the little orange gummies every morning. I think they're great, but like I know so many people that kind of quietly take fiber that there's like such an opportunity there to create, I don't know, potentially a better for you fiber product or a better fiber product or a better fiber brand that's maybe modernized. And I've actually been surprised that like I'm living in a world where protein's and everything and not like soluble fiber. Like I would have actually guessed that we would have started seeing fiber pop up and everything before we started seeing protein pop up and everything.
Yeah, I also think that fiber is certainly very underrated in terms of category, since a lot of the hype is around protein, which is great. But it is quite interesting that you quite haven't seen it yet when it comes to fiber. So yeah, I think that's gonna be one to watch out for potentially. What's the most underrated skill or habit that helps you succeed but rarely gets talked about?
I don't know what commonly gets talked about or rarely gets talked about, but I'd say being paranoid has been my number one asset. Like I think to be in this space and be successful, you have to be equal parts confident and egotistical enough to think that you can change the world, but also paranoid that you're going to screw it up every single day. And you can't be 100% paranoid. You can't be 100% ego and confidence because you can't. But I think having a nice yin and yang there has really been, and often my paranoia wins out, and it's something I'm always working on. But I think that like that is what has kept me sharp. And iterating and finding product market fit is like you need to have that. Just like how can I guarantee that people are going to like this as much as I think they're going to like this? Because again, going to earlier, you were asking how do you know when to go big at retail? How do you know when to go big and blow it up? If you're not paranoid and you're just confident, you're going to 10,000 locations on your first production run, right? You're signing up for massive production runs. You're doing all that, and you're like, people are going to love it. And then like they don't, and then your business is over. If you're exclusively paranoid, you're never deploying enough capital to actually test and learn at the scale you need to really like take it big, and you're never really able to go after that like aggressive growth scale. But like having that kind of healthy balance of both of like, I absolutely think we're going to be successful, but what if we're not? And having that pulling you apart at all times, like I think for me personally, it's been incredibly successful, and it's actually the number one thing I look for in founders now.
What have you changed your mind the most on when it comes to venture or company building in the past year?
This one depresses me. I have lived pretty much my entire life starting off trusting people implicitly and then letting that trust be eroded, if at all. Unfortunately, this new job has taught me that I have to start off not trusting somebody and then let the trust be built over time. Truly, like I don't like to live my life this way, but like it's almost like I have to put a hat on when I am like walking into my Cartograph job. I'm like, okay, remember, you're not going to trust anybody at face value. You're not going to take anybody at face value today. Remember that. Remember, because I don't like operating that way personally. I like to believe that like everyone is like clear and upstanding and, what they say is real. But doing this, the venture job long enough, unfortunately, it just comes with, I think, being in finance. Like I kind of make a joke to people. Like everyone complains about their landlord. I don't think anyone's set out to be a landlord. Landlords are the result of many tenants. And I think that a lot of complaints about VC are ironically due to the exposure that VCs have to a lot of founders. And like, I'm gonna get shredded for saying that, but it's brutal. Like you do something with the best of intentions and then a founder turns around and shreds you for it, like publicly. And you're like, oh, that's like, for example, like you take the time out of your day to give a founder feedback and then they criticize you for giving them feedback. And you're like, oh, I didn't have to do that. And then that leads to a situation where you stop giving founders feedback. And then founders are like, doesn't it suck that VCs don't give feedback? And you're like, it does. It really does. Because I would love to give every single founder I meet an hour of like no holds barred, like here is what I actually think about your business, but I can't do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Makes a
lot of sense. And yeah, it is a bummer in terms of like the differences between, when you actually become a VC and investor and how you have to make that shift.
Yeah.
That's tough. Finally, looking back, what's one thing that you wish you knew before starting your journey?
The whole journey.
The whole journey. On everything.
Yeah, the whole journey. This is something I actually still am working on. So I probably will be working on this for the entire journey. And it's funny we're using the word journey. You have more time than you think. You just do. Like on the one hand, you want everything to happen immediately. You're in venture, you're in a startup land, like everything moves fast. You're hearing about successes every day. But like, building a company quickly happens slowly and then all at once. And the trap that I often find myself falling into is like I orient around the exits so much. But if you think about life, like let's say you have like 10 exits, like that you feel really good about, that's 10 days. So like, are you really only going to be happy for 10 days out of your entire lifetime on the planet? Yeah,
it's true.
And you really, really need to learn to enjoy the actual ride up and the actual like process of building the company. Because if you only want the exit, then like, don't get me wrong, the exit feels amazing. It's great, but it's one day. And you have to enjoy every other day around it.
Yeah, I remember hearing somebody, a successful entrepreneur, talk about what it was like to actually sell his business.
Yeah.
And it was like a 9-figure outcome, right? No VC. 9-figure outcome for this person. And it was, I think, New Year's. And he was just at home with his wife and a couple of friends, looking at the computer screen, refreshing, and then poop. It just, is in the bank account.
Yeah.
Remember, it was just like almost anticlimactic. Climactic. Obviously, that's a incredible amount of money, but it was just like, all right, like that's done.
It.
You think it's a much bigger, thing, but it's like, all right, that's like, in the account now, and then you like have some champagne, celebrate a little bit, but it was not this big, thing. It was just like, all right, that's it. So I totally agree with you. That's. Yeah.
I think if anything, there's more relief when it finally happens because you're like someone else's problem now. You're like, oh, but then like 6 months later, you're like, man, I miss those problems. I really miss those problems. It's tricky. Yeah, that's like, and that's why, I think it's my biggest thing is like I need to. My advice to anybody, just because it's my own issue that I'm always working through, is like, again, I have more time than I think I do. Slow down a little bit. Like find ways to actually enjoy each day instead of like looking at each day as like, okay, this is going to be like pain to get to the outcome, because the outcome is just a thing that happens one time, and that's not worth the waiting for.
Totally. Final question for you on a fun one. What consumer brand do you personally can't live without?
Oh, out of my fund or just in general?
Just in general.
Oh, I'm a big fast food guy. Like Papa John's and Domino's, if those disappeared tomorrow, I'd be extremely upset. In fact, I'd be unhappy for the rest of my life that I could like never have like a Papa John's pizza again. After that, it would be like McDonald's and Chick-fil-A. Like you wipe those 4 restaurants off the planet, and I'm very, very angry. I'm very frustrated.
Yeah, I think for me in this realm, Domino's for sure, Chick-fil-A. I love Baja Fresh. I absolutely love Baja Fresh. I'm definitely not going to put this on because I really want to have the Chipotle founder on the show.
Sure.
But when I was growing up, Baja Fresh was like everywhere.
Yeah.
And then Chipotle came in and just totally destroyed Baja Fresh. And I like Chipotle, but Baja Fresh to me was like the creme. It was just, it was like my first experience for a burrito, and it was just probably just nostalgia. But very, very bummed that Baja Fresh has been just like slowly like just rolling back. But anyway, this has been great. Alex, thank you so much for your time. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, I had a great time, Mike. I really appreciate the questions.
And there you have it. Alex, thanks so much for coming on the show. Glimpse, thanks so much for being on today's episode sponsor. Again, check out Glimpse. They're an AI-powered end-to-end deductions management service focused on recovering revenue from KeHE, Unify, Amazon, and Target for consumer brands. And check out the newsletter at theconsumervc.com for the latest fundraising news, for latest deal news, all about consumer. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this one.